Hello, I'm Greg with Primal Rights. Do you guys know that you need to clean your suppressors? Do you know why you need to clean them? What about how? Do you know how to clean your suppressors? Well, in this video, we're going to talk about all of that. So let's get right to it. The first thing is why? Why do we need to clean them? Well, there's quite a lot of reasons actually why we need to clean these suppressors. Now, the obvious reason here why we need to clean these suppressors is because every time we fire a round through them, the burnt powder residue that gets caught in the suppressor lays down a layer of fouling. Every subsequent round lays more powder fouling or powder residue, burnt powder residue, in the suppressor. It basically coats all of the interior surfaces. Now, the baffle design and the suppressor design itself, the cartridge you're shooting, the bullets that you're shooting, the powder that you're using specifically, all contributes to how much fouling gets trapped in this thing, how much residue gets trapped in there. Now, this fouling will build up round after round after round, okay? There'll be a certain amount that gets blown out the end of the suppressor, and there'll be a certain amount that gets trapped inside in the baffle stack. This buildup will continue until basically it'll fill the entire suppressor. Now, a lot of you out there haven't shot enough rounds through a suppressor to have that happen. I have. I have filled up a suppressor to the point where you could see the fouling encroaching into the bore of the suppressor. Okay, there was literally no room in it, and it didn't really operate at all. And it's not a good thing. Okay. Now let's get into the list of reasons why it's important to clean these suppressors. The first and maybe the most obvious is your attachment method. If you allow powder fouling to build up too much, then your attachment method will become seized. Now, any of you that's ever had a suppressor stuck on the end of your barrel or on the end of your brake, there's different attachment methods here. Some of them are very rugged and robust, and others are kind of dainty, like a direct thread setup, for instance, a little bit dainty, or maybe a brake attach thread-on suppressor. When we attach these suppressors to a brake or to our rifles or something, we've got an attachment point that is larger than the bore diameter, obviously. And that larger portion in the back of the can, if something protrudes through the face of that, then all of the carbon buildup on the inside can encroach on that. So the brake attach systems out there, for instance, suffer from this greatly. Because if you don't clean the suppressor for too many rounds and you go to take it off the rifle, you literally won't be able to get it off. Because the buildup has enlarged the size of the brake or the attachment method inside the suppressor. So when you go to remove the suppressor, you essentially unthread it from the attachment, and then you have to thread it back across the residue. And a lot of you would call that carbon fouling. That burnt powder residue is extremely hard. Maybe having to crunch your suppressor and unthread it across the top of that buildup. And when you're doing that, you're compressing this stuff, and it is extremely hard. You're like making diamonds as you unthread this thing. Not a good idea, okay? So cleaning the suppressor and the attachment. So it's important that you also clean the attachment on the rifle itself. The brake needs to be cleaned. The threads on the end of the barrel, the crown, all of this stuff needs to be cleaned when you're going to be cleaning your suppressor to make sure that this attachment goes smoothly and repeatably. On a precision rifle, we're looking for the ability to repeat here. It needs to be uniform from shot to shot, session to session, every time we take the suppressor off and put it back on. So we need a clean attachment point in order to make sure that that happens, with a very clean shoulder lockup on the suppressor to make sure the coaxial alignment stays the same. That will keep our point of impact shift to a minimum. The next thing we need to worry about is if we let this buildup get out of control and it starts encroaching into the bore of the suppressor, you can actually have a bullet contact this stuff. Okay, so you'll constrict the bore of that suppressor to the point where the bullet is actually going to contact the fouling. And when that happens, your accuracy is going to go right in the toilet. Okay, you're not going to be able to hit anything, because having your bullet impact something after it's just left the muzzle is very bad. It can lead to very dangerous pressure spikes at the very worst, and it can lead to accuracy problems in even the best case scenario. Now, the real issue that affects precision rifle shooters here is the weight change. As this residue builds up in the suppressor, it will change the weight of the suppressor. Every subsequent round that you fire will add more and more weight. And pretty soon, when the suppressor gets heavy enough, it will literally pull you out of your node. So the place where you've got your rifle tuned, and those of you that are hand loading out there, you've got your ammunition tuned perfectly to this system. As the weight changes in the suppressor, the entire time of the barrel changes. So the harmonic and the way that the barrel moves as that pressure wave is riding down the bore, the mode and the frequency of that movement is going to change based on how much weight is out there. It's essentially the same effect as moving a tuner. But this time, every time we shoot, we're moving the tuner out a little bit, okay? We're adding weight, which would be kind of like the same thing here as a tuner would be if we moved it. The only difference is we're not moving it and setting it and leaving it in a single spot. Every time we fire, it's adding more weight and moving that tune, and it's going to push you in and out of your nodes as the weight comes on. Now, many of you may have experienced this already in the form of a point of impact shift, and your zero just miraculously shifted. So you're out there shooting and you just, oh, hey, my zero's off by a tenth or a tenth and a half of a mil or something like that. And so you make a scope adjustment and you re-zero, and then you just carry on. And then some time goes by and your zero's off again. And this time it might be right back where it was before. And so you back out again, you go, and it's and you maybe didn't realize that what you were chasing around here is your barrel's tune because you're not cleaning your suppressor frequently enough, and the added weight is causing your point of impact shifts. Now, secondarily, as this is going to be going on, not only are you going to experience a point of impact shift, but your barrel is going to just not shoot well anymore. You're going to see your groups open up a little bit, so you could get finely tuned, and your groups will open up. And then you go ahead and readdress your load, and you get them cranked down to a little knot again. And then some certain amount of rounds later, it opens up again. You're going to be chasing a ever-moving target here. You're going to be essentially chasing 1 to 2/10 of a mil of drift perpetually. Those of you that are shooting small enough to see this, you will always be chasing that if you're not cleaning your suppressor. Now, adding on to the weight problem here, when you've got a lot of residue inside your suppressor, it has a tendency to soak up and absorb environmental variables such as humidity. So if you're in a high humidity environment, you might find that your powder residue is soaking up a lot of water. Now, water per its volume is very heavy. Okay, a gallon of water weighs like 8 pounds. So you don't need to put very much water in this suppressor in order to have it change the way that this thing shoots dramatically. Now, this one might be super obvious to you guys, but as the suppressor fills up, the sound reduction capability of the suppressor is going to be dramatically reduced. Instead of being a full volume inside there, we're now constricting the volume. We're removing the volume, and we're also removing the dimensions of the baffles. Because as they get coated with junk, they're not in the same shape anymore, and so they won't interact with the pressure wave that's coming through there in the same way. But then also, the volume of the suppressor is going to be reduced, which will increase the volume of the report. So it won't be able to do its job as a result of not being able to collect all of that gas volume that's coming out of the bore. The very next obvious thing here is that if we filled the can up with residue and it's loud now, it's not doing a good job of suppression as a result of not trapping all of that gas volume that's being generated by our powder charge, we're going to see a dramatic reduction in our recoil reduction capability as well. Because that volume is not being trapped in the suppressor anymore, and it's not interacting with the baffles in the same way, and it's going to make that can recoil really hard in comparison. So we're going to have a lot more felt recoil on a can with a bunch of crud in it than we would on a brand new suppressor that's spotless clean. Because that blast that's coming through, that muzzle blast that suppressor is catching. Instead of interacting with the baffles correctly, it is being jetted out the front. And so it behaves almost as if we don't have a suppressor on. So you're going to feel that recoil a lot more on a dirty can than a clean one. Well, now that we've covered a few reasons on why to clean suppressors, and there's, of course, a lot more reasons why, how do we clean them? Because a lot of our suppressors are sealed. The precision rifle suppressors, most of them that we use, are sealed. You can't get inside them. Those of you that have a suppressor that can come apart, you just grab some CLR, which is the calcium lime rust remover that you'd find in a hardware store. I'll put a link to that and all the other items that you need down in the description of this video. So all of the junk that you need to clean suppressors, I'll put that down in the description here so you guys can just have easy access to go and buy what you need to get this done effectively. But for those of you that can disassemble your can, you just take it apart, get some CLR, and just start scrubbing. Okay, put some gloves on and start scrubbing. Once it's all clean, put it back together and you're done. This video is mostly for those of us that are shooting sealed suppressors, okay? We can't take them apart to service them. Let's have a look how we clean these suppressors. We've got a Thunder Beast Ultra 9 here, and we're gonna clean this thing. It's pretty filthy inside. Probably 500 rounds or something on this, maybe a little more since it was last cleaned. So here's what we need. First thing, we need some way to seal up the end of this thing. This is just a little plug that I put in the base of the can here, and basically we just want to plug that hole up so that we can hold some fluid in here. Next, you want this pedestal, this little suppressor pedestal, and we've got these available on the online store at primalrights.com. And so this is a nice little pedestal here that will hold this suppressor upright. And it'll accommodate anything from, I think, 1.3 inch all the way up to 1.8 inch suppressor. And we just shove it down in there like that. And then those fins hold this suppressor, and that'll keep it upright and keep it from falling over in the sink here, and holds it up off the bottom. And the bottom is got these serrations in it, so it lets water go through here, and that can be pretty important for flushing debris. Now the next thing we've got is a Thunder Beast specific little funnel here, and so I'm just going to screw this into the top, and this just lets us pour the CLR in there and lets this stuff drain out and doesn't drool all down the side of the suppressor. Next up, we need this CLR. Now this is the stuff right here, calcium lime and rust remover, or otherwise known as CLR. I'll put a link in the description to where you can get this as well as everything else here. We'll get our suppressor set up over the drain here, and we'll just fill this thing up with CLR. And when it fills, it'll kind of vapor lock itself in the baffles. It'll bubble up here like this, and you just keep filling it. And it's fine if it runs over a bit. We need the whole suppressor filled right to the brim with CLR. And I like to run the water because CLR is pretty aggressive, so you don't want it messing up your plumbing. That's what the serrations in the bottom of that stand are for. You can see the chemical reaction here as that CLR eats that powder fouling inside there, and it's just going to keep bubbling up out of the suppressor like that. And our little funnel here drags that goo out away. Give you a little closer look at that chemical reaction. You can see our little funnel here is dripping that away, and it's just running away down the drain. And the side of the suppressor is staying nice and clean. Now this whole operation can take quite a while, and it can take quite a few cycles. So we're just going to let this sit here and bubble for as long as it takes. Basically, once you stop seeing the bubbles, then it's not really doing much in the way of a chemical reaction anymore. And at that point, you're pretty good to just go ahead and start doing the next part of this.
Now, after a few minutes, depending on the severity of how dirty your suppressor is, the chemical reaction will mostly stop, and it'll stop erupting over the side of the drainage spout here. And when that's happened, you can just go ahead and pull the suppressor out, and you can just dump the can out. And you can see there's CLR and gross chunks of goo popping out there. It will pull our plug there, and that will open the floodgates. I'm going to kick on the hot water because we're going to need that here in a moment. Unscrew our little funnel here. It'll just rinse everything in this hot water. Now we'll start putting some hot water through this can. You can see there how it's, with this hot water, it's erupting a bunch of junk out the bottom and out the top. Yeah, that's pretty hot there. You can see how I just shook it using a little bit of the hydraulic power of the water to knock some of these chunks loose, these bigger chunks. Once we get the hot water cycle a try, we're going to switch over to cold water. You want to wait until it gets nice and cold. Once you feel it's very cold, we'll just shock this can with this hot can. We'll put the cold water in, and look at more chunks running out because the expansion and contraction of the suppressor going from hot to cold breaks loose the grip between some of that junk and the walls of the suppressor. So now that it's good and cold, we'll do the same thing, and you can see more chunks coming out. You can see how nice this base is. It just holds that suppressor up firmly. We don't have to worry about it falling over. It's gripped in there securely, and the water's running through it and out from underneath it and taking all the junk with it. Okay, we've got our can good and heated up there. We'll just get the water out of it, and you can see more chunks falling out there, so we've still got plenty of debris and plenty of powder fouling left in this suppressor. Now we'll plug the bottom up again, get her in our stand, screw our funnel in the top, and fill it back up with CLR. Now I gotta pour some in and wait. We'll kick the water on just a little bit, and that way it can run that debris down the sink. You kind of want to let it drink it and then fill it up, and it'll keep filling those baffles in there, and then eventually you'll get it all the way full and it'll start bubbling out the top. And you can see the powder residue in the bubbles there, so it's definitely reacting to things again. And once again, we've got our chemical reaction started here, and it's eating that powder fouling in there. And we'll just let this go, and we'll just keep doing this cycle as many times as is necessary to get this thing mostly clean. Now, it doesn't have to be 100% clean, but we want it pretty clean. Now, suppressors that are really dirty, as soon as you pour this CLR in there the first time, it's going to have an absolute volcano of junk coming out of this spout.
Okay, so how many times do you do this cycle? Well, you do it until it's clean. Well, how do you know when it's clean? Well, you can look inside there with a bore scope for one. The other thing is, hey, this thing, it should be factory weight, okay? You keep cleaning this thing until it gets back to its factory weight. Now, it won't get exactly to the factory weight because, again, you're going to have some water in here. That water's heavy. It's going to weigh a lot. And you're still going to have some residue left over in the suppressor. And so you keep cleaning it and you keep cycling it like this until you can get a good close to factory weight. Now, after you finish cleaning the suppressor, it's very important that you do not attach this thing to the end of your barrel, especially if you're storing your rifles upright, muzzle up, because you rinse this thing out with water, that water is going to be in the suppressor. And if you stand it up, it's going to be eking out of that thing in whatever direction you stand it up. Now, most of the time, the baffles are oriented and they're kind of pointing back towards the rifle. and they are sharpest down that direction, and then they expand and get larger toward the muzzle end of the cam. As a result, it's best to stand the suppressors up so that the attachment point for the suppressor is down. Put it on some paper towels or something and just stand it up there, and that'll allow the stuff to run out. Anything that's going to run out will be allowed to run out. In advance of doing that, you can hit the suppressor with some compressed air from both ends and just blow a bunch of water out of it as much as you can. Now, obviously, if you've got water coming out of your airline here, that's not going to help at all. So you need to make sure that you're not blowing water into the can when you do this. But if you stand this thing up on your barrel without letting it dry first, then everything's going to run out of the suppressor, down your barrel, onto your bolt, through your firing pin hole in your bolt, down your firing pin, onto your cocking piece, into your trigger. Okay? Now, this will start a chain reaction of events that's very undesirable that you do not want. Okay? So storing your rifle vertically while there's something wet and gooey in your suppressor is not a good idea. Okay? So don't do that. Always dry your suppressor before reattaching it to your rifle. And obviously you should be using some good copper-based anti-seize when attaching it to the threads or your attachment method on your rifle. So you're putting this close to factory weight suppressor on, and hey, your zero is probably going to shift here, folks. And if you developed your load for the rifle when this was really dirty and really heavy, then that load might not be good. And you might have to reevaluate the load that you're shooting in your ammunition also, because you tuned this thing when it was all full of residue. And so it weighed a lot different. The barrel's harmonic is not the same. And so don't be surprised if you need to readjust your zero or reevaluate your load when you clean your suppressor. Now, once you've decided that you're going to maintain your suppressors properly, then none of this changing will actually affect anything, because you'll be cleaning the suppressor before any of these ill effects start happening. And so you'll find that you can have a much more stable and predictable impact downrange, because you're not having this shift erode your confidence and change your point of impact all the time. So a good policy to get into here is to clean your suppressor every time you clean your barrel. Now, those of you that are cleaning your barrel every 1,000 or 2,000 rounds or something like that, this doesn't apply to you. And I'm not saying that you can't shoot well with a barrel. I had a 6-dasher here that I probably fired 1,300 rounds through that thing before I cleaned it, and it shot in the 3s the entire time. You know what it wouldn't do, though? Shooting the zeros. You know, 0s and 1s were off limits to that thing. Your point of impact stability from not cleaning your barrel on certain cartridges with certain bullets and powder combinations can be really good. And your point of impact won't change. You won't have a shifting or wandering zero. Whereas if you're cleaning your barrel all the time, sometimes that can lead to a zero shift depending on. So depending on how you're doing your barrel cleaning intervals. Now, I like to clean my barrel about every 100 rounds to 300 rounds on the top side. I oftentimes won't start to see a severe accuracy degradation until about 350-ish or 400 or 500 rounds. It depends on the barrel and the bullet and powder combination that I'm using. If I clean every 100 or so rounds, maybe 300 at the outside, well, then I know that somewhere between there is, well, then I know that all of those rounds are going to be predictable, and the rifle will have demonstrated its predictability through several of those cleaning cycles pretty early in the barrel's life. And so I can get a really good, firm understanding of how it's all behaving. And then by the time I do that on a few different barrels, I can really get a good relationship with that cartridge and learn what it likes, what it doesn't like, and how it typically behaves with certain barrels. And granted, if you change barrel manufacturer, well, then all bets are off. But if you're using barrels from the same manufacturer, generally speaking, you can really get a good relationship there and a really good understanding of what to expect here. So when I clean my barrel, I'll clean the suppressor. Now, if you start doing this when the suppressor is brand new, you won't get very much powder fouling built up in there. It'll be really easy to clean, and it won't take very long at all. Now, if you wait until there's a ton of buildup in the suppressor, it's going to take forever to clean that thing. because the layers upon layers deep, it just, the CLR won't penetrate down to the bottom layer, and it's just going to have to slough off layer by layer, and it's going to really be a gooey mess inside there. And oftentimes, if you've got that kind of residue built up in your suppressor, what I recommend is go through some CLR cycles, as many as you feel necessary, then mount it back on the rifle and hit that thing with some rounds. That concussion and that blast will jar some of that stuff loose and blast it out the end, and jar some of it loose enough to where you can immediately take it in and clean it again. Say you fire 10 rounds or something, and then immediately you take it in while it's still warm and clean it again. And that can be, I've found, very effective at getting really stubborn, heavily crudded up suppressors clean. And it goes without saying, if you can reach in the back of the suppressor with a brush and get some of that junk out of there that way, hey, do that too. You know, I mean, basically anything goes here, folks. We need to get this thing back to factory weight. Whatever way we can do it, that's a good way. Okay. You know, I bet there's a lot of you out there in my audience that are really handy. That means you can change your own oil. You can change your tires if necessary. You can build stuff out of wood. You know, if you wanted to, you could build a house. You handle when stuff breaks around the house. You got something that needs fixed, you go fix it. You got a piece of machinery that's broken down, you go take care of that too. And you know, there's something to be said about having that knowledge and being able to do it. Now, I'd like to draw a little bit of a parallel here with something that I heard someone say one time, which is basically like having no ability to use a sword doesn't make you righteous. Instead, having the ability to use a sword and not using it makes you righteous. It was something to that effect. I would encourage you guys. I know that many of you know exactly the quote that I'm thinking of here. It's just not on the tip of my tongue right now. But essentially, it means that, hey, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Now, I'd like to speak to you today about how you're supposed to be giving and tie it to just how much of this stuff that you guys can do, that you are doing, that maybe you shouldn't be doing. So I hope to offer you a different perspective here today. So let's start by reading some scripture. And this is Jesus speaking, and he is, now you'll notice that I share a lot of Jesus's words with you guys because, hey, he was perfect. If Jesus said it, that means it's important, okay? That's not just any old quote from any old body. That is the most important person that has ever lived on this earth saying something to us. In Luke chapter 6, verse 38, Jesus said, "Give and you will receive. Your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over, and poured into your lap. The amount you give will determine the amount you get back." And I wonder now if some of you were thinking, you know, I can change my oil, but maybe I shouldn't. Because that's the conclusion that I've been drawn to. You know, I have been blessed with amazing gifts. I have been blessed with the ability, I have a massive amount of technical know-how. I have a ton of experience with computers, like all of the graphic design, all of the website design, all of the video editing, all of the camera knowledge, all of the shooting stuff. I mean, everything that you guys see here is done by my hand. With the exception, obviously, of some of the stuff you see that comes from my friends, like Taylor at Stratton Custom Rifles or Daniel at Primal Finish. The art that they provide, I mean, they're very blessed also. And I know a lot of you out there are extremely talented. You are so talented. But I wonder if you're misusing those talents, because I know that I felt like I was. Because I can do so much. Like, for instance, working on my pickup, right? So something goes wrong with my vehicle. I can change my own oil. I can rotate my tires. I can replace any part on that thing. I could replace the entire engine, the transmission. I have a ton of computer knowledge, and I can right down to replacing a chip on the board that controls the computer in that thing. I could do all of that myself. There is literally nothing that I would need someone else to do. I could buy the part online. I could rip it apart, replace the part, change everything that I wanted to, put it back together, and it would probably run better than it did from the factory. Because I'm just very gifted that way, very detail-oriented, and it's wonderful that I can do that. But I patently refuse to do it. You will never catch me wrenching on my own truck. Do you want to know why? While it is amazing that I've been gifted in that way to be able to do those things, what's more amazing is the gift of realizing my purpose. The thing that I was actually created to be. And I wasn't created to be a mechanic. I wasn't created to be in construction, building houses. I wasn't created to be a concrete guy. I wasn't created to be a singer. I know some of you find that very hard to believe. I was created to be an instructor of precision rifle shooters. I was created to innovate in the precision rifle space and to create new products, to perfect new methodologies and processes, and to share that information with people. That is my purpose. That's what I was created for. And I bet that is obvious for anyone looking on. I have more passion for that than I do anything else in my life, by far. When it comes time to change my oil, I would do so only begrudgingly. Because every minute that I spend doing that, I'm not doing this. I'm not working on the next thing. I'm not working on perfecting this discipline. So every minute that I spend doing something that's not this can be looked at as a misuse of my gift. It's squandering my potential. It's squandering the very thing that God gave me. Because the truth of this is that someone else can change my oil. Someone else actually likes doing it. Someone else can work on my pickup. Not only can they do it, someone is better at it than I am. And the reason that they're better at it than I am is because they were built by God to do that. They have skills that I could never think to have because they wake up with a wrench in their hand. They go to bed with a wrench in their hand. I know some of you out there are like that. I've known people like that in my life, where they are just fixated on fixing things, on improving things, working on stuff, machines. They're fixated on that the same way that I am fixated on precision rifles. What a wonderful gift and what a wonderful blessing it is that we are all so wonderfully and uniquely created. The thought that there's not another person alive right now, nor has there ever been another person alive, nor will there ever be another person alive that has had the totality of experiences that I've been allowed to have, that has shaped everything about my gifts, about my personality, about my perspective. None of you can see things the way that I see them. Not exactly, because you haven't lived my life. And I can't possibly see your perspective. because I haven't lived yours. And that is true of every single person that has ever lived and will ever live. What a wonderful thing to acknowledge and appreciate and have gratitude for. Because that means that every single one of you out there, just like me, have the ability to lean into your purpose, the thing that you were created to do. You can pursue that and nothing else but that and Jesus, and your life will be more fulfilling than you can possibly imagine. But in order to see that realized, someone would have to pay you. Someone would have to want your services. In order for me to feel the fulfillment of my role, I have to be providing service. It's just like the washing of feet. Jesus was washing people's feet. Here's the Son of the living God, right? The most perfect man that's ever lived, the King, and he's out there washing people's feet. So there is a divine righteousness in using your gift to perform services for others. But in order for that to happen, there has to be others. What I'm saying here is if we all did everything ourselves, no one would be able to do what they were called to do. When I realized that, everything in my life changed. The way that I gave changed. The nature of my giving, because we're called to, in the scripture, we're called to give, okay? Tithing and giving, I mean, this is something that we're called to do. And you're not a right Christian if you're not doing it. And one of the ways that you can give is by paying someone else to do the things that you are not anointed to do. If it's not what you were built for, if it's not your purpose, then you should be having someone else do it. Because there's somebody out there, it's their purpose to do this. They need it. Without it, they're not whole. They're not fulfilled. They're not seeing their purpose fulfilled. They're not able to live a fulfilling life. In the very same way, were it not for those of you watching this, were it not for those of you that are purchasing the wares that we sell here, my reason for being would cease to exist. And so it is one of the greatest blessings that you can provide to pay someone else to render service, even if you can do it yourself. Sometimes especially if you can do it yourself. Because if you don't need someone else to do it, but you have them do it anyway, that is wondrous in its power. The number of people's lives that you can touch by doing that is virtually endless. So despite the fact that I can do basically everything that I need in my life myself, I've been blessed in such an amazing way to be able to say that. Not all of us have, and that's perfectly fine too. But those of you that are very capable out there, you might want to consider for a minute that, hey, everybody needs you, man. And don't worry about the money that you spend having these other people perform these services, because everything you give in this way will be pressed down, shaken to make room for more, multiplied greatly and poured out in your lap. Everything you give, you're going to get back. Everything. A lot of you out there, you pride yourselves on, oh, I'm going to do this myself and I'm going to save a bunch of money. You're not saving any money. You're losing money. Your refusal to bless others is costing you your whole life. We see this happen when times get tough, as they are right now, as they're probably going to be tougher here in the near future. People start hoarding and they just do everything themselves, and they just bear hug everything that they've got, and they don't want to bless other people at all. That is the exact opposite of what you should be doing. If you want to have blessings, you better bless other people, as many of them as you can get your hands on. Now, I'm going to read here from Luke chapter 11, verse 33. No one lights a lamp and then hides it or puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where its light can be seen by all who enter the house. This scripture supports everything that I've just said. It supports the previous scripture. As you often find in the Bible, there's connections everywhere that tie together. Because you're not just any old body. You're important. God is looking to do works through you in the world. He needs you to take your blessings that He's giving you and bless others. Because if you don't go, no one else is going. You can't look to your right and look to your left and say, well, you guys should go. They're not going to go, man. Okay? You have to go. You have to be the one to do it. It has to be you. Because you're the one that has been awakened. You're the one that knows the truth of what God has given us. You're the one that is supposed to be giving. And here is the very heart of Christianity. Being willing to bless other people. Being willing to bless even our enemies. Those people that strongly dislike me, I could not make any more YouTube videos just to spite them. You'll never learn another thing from me, ever. But instead, God said to bless your enemies. So that's what I'll do. I'll keep letting my blessings, because they're not mine anyways, they're God's. I'll just let that be poured out on whoever He feels like. Because I might not know what that person's going through. I might not know what it is that they're dealing with. And so who cares? It doesn't make any difference. The point is that I be a blessing as much as I can to as many people as I can. And sometimes that means paying more money for a service than I think I should, because that other person is probably counting on it a lot more than I am. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but either way, I know that without me having them do that service, they have no purpose. And so it is incredibly important that we remember our place in this, and that our cooperation and our obedience is not something that we can afford to not give. God has asked for it, and we're supposed to be operating out of faith that He's got us. He's taking care of everything that needs to be taken care of. We don't have to worry about anything. And it's oftentimes most important that we do that when we don't necessarily understand. When we don't understand, or maybe even don't agree, that's when it's oftentimes most important to do that. So be the blessing that you can be, in whatever way that you can be. If not financially, then give your time. If not your time, then maybe you have other resources that you can give. But either way, those of you that think that you're saving money by doing everything yourself, what you're actually doing is cutting yourself off from your blessing. Because if you don't give Him anything, there's nothing to press down. Jesus, multiple times when He was here on this earth, and God behaves in exactly the same way. He multiplies things. There was 4,000 or 5,000 people following Jesus around on multiple occasions, and there was no food. They weren't anywhere where there was any food. And Jesus said, well, bring me what we've got. And just a couple of fish and a couple of loaves of bread. And Jesus multiplied that to feed thousands. And there was extra left over. And so whatever it is that you have, whatever your gifts are that you've been given, just give that to someone. Bless them. And in turn, you will be blessed much, much more. Start small if you're small right now. If your gifts are small and your ability to give is small, then start doing that now. It will compound be multiplied and visited back on you. Then you'll have a little more next time. Do that, and it'll be multiplied. God will multiply it and visit it back on you until pretty soon the amount of blessing that you're giving is so big that the amount of blessing coming back your direction is bigger than you can even handle. And that's exactly how this works in life, folks. If you're busy trying to protect yourself, protect your finances, and protect your resources, and you're one of those hoarders that is just greedily trying to consume and keep everything for yourself, you're going to lose it all. And you're going to cut yourself off from your blessings, all of them. And you are going to also cut yourself off from your own salvation. Because behaving in that way is not right by any stretch of the imagination. So when you're out to dinner, buy someone else's dinner. When your car breaks down, have someone else fix it, even if you can. When something needs done around your house, you need something constructed. Yeah, if your calling in life, if you were created to be a construction guy, do it yourself. Nobody is here innovating and doing my job for me every single day. That's my purpose. That's what I was made for. But I wasn't made to work on my truck. I know that. So when I need somebody to do those types of things, I go find them. I take a tremendous amount of joy in finding those people that I feel should be blessed by my presence, that I should go and give a blessing to. Those people that I encounter, and they're pleasing, they're nice, they're trying to do their level best. I look at their situation and I say, man, I would love to be a blessing in your life. And whatever happens for me as a consequence, it's like, well, whatever, none of this really matters that much anyways. What I have, everything I have is just a gift. So who cares? I can't take it with me when I'm dead. But what I can and will take with me is the good works that I perform here. Those times when I'm a blessing for people, that will put me at the right hand of God. Scripture says so. Those blessings that we give will be not only visited on us in this life, but we will be exalted after this life. So I encourage you folks, please. I understand things are going difficult right now and things are getting pretty tight, and we're probably looking at in the immediate future things getting even more tight. But don't try to just grasp everything out there and bring unto you. Instead, try to be a blessing. Free yourself from the sin of greed. Free yourself and operate in an abundant and kind and giving way that God wants you to be. By doing that, you'll ensure your safety in the coming peril. It's not by any other way, because you won't be saved by anyone. You'll be saved by God, either by something He does directly or by someone He sends to save you. So you can forget about trying to protect yourself, because everything that you've been given is a gift. And if you're busy treating it as something you've created that your whole identity is attached to, that's not going to end well for you. I don't want that for any of you. Instead, go looking to bless people as much as you can, as abundantly as you can, because that will be the key that unlocks the door to all of your future blessings. So if you want those blessings to be small, then you give small. But if you want those blessings to be large, well, then you better give large while you can. Because if you don't behave that way, then it's very likely that everything will be taken from you anyway. The moral of the story here, folks, is to go be a blessing to someone as many times as you can. I hope you've all enjoyed this message here today. I certainly have enjoyed bringing it to you. And if you haven't done this already, I strongly encourage you to go pick up a Bible. As I've said many times in the past, you don't need me or want me to be a go-between between you and the Almighty. I'm imperfect. He is not. So if you want to get a relationship going with him directly, and you really should want to do that, you're going to have to pick up the scripture and start reading it yourself and getting a personal relationship with Jesus, not using me as a proxy. God bless you all, and I hope you have a wonderful week.